Mark Van Vleck, Assistant City Manager. And yes, we've been working on this for a while. And many of those same folks that raised their hand were part of the team that worked on the 25 cents related to the surcharge. In fact, all of them, I believe, worked on that effort. And during that effort, they asked to participate in determining essentially when the next project needs to move forward. And we accommodated that effort because they have learned to work as a team. Why are we here? First off, several years ago, you told us to move forward to get it a drought-proof water supply to meet future needs for the coastal bend. And that has really been driven as much as anything by industry and their concerns to be able to continue operations. What really has come to the forefront in the last couple of years is the reduced supply, which is a result of basically three things. One is we had additional sediment in Choke Canyon, the latest drought of record, and then the callback provisions with LNRA or Lake Texana, and them calling some of those back. So really those three events. At the same time, economic growth, I think it was a couple weeks ago that a gentleman said all these things that are occurring during public comment about the economic growth in the area, and they are requiring water. Okay, we're going to give you kind of when the demand is to be occurring, and we're really recommending move forward with the seawater desalination plant, continue with our efforts in that area. And finally, we'll kind of review some of the things we've looked at as far as alternative water supplies. What do we need? A drought-proof water supply. You're going to see that based on what we're projecting as demands that are coming in, that we're looking at needing it in the 2022 to 2023 time frame. Can we afford it? And this kind of comes back to the 25 cents that I just discussed, and the fact that industries are paying an extra 25 cents a thousand, or essentially charging themselves to help fund this future effort. Due to the long lead item times associated with permitting and procurement of this type of project, that we still continue the current process and keep moving forward. This is why we put the team together. In January, during your offsite, your retreat, you told us to come back with a trigger. And after that, we put together the team on April 11th, or in that time frame, to essentially work through it. And they all raised their hands. The team that have been working with us. We met basically about every other week for several months, working through all these details. And today we're here to offer our recommendations from the committee. It's not just staff, it's actually the entire committee that worked on this. And their key factors are supply, demand, and finance. Once again, reviewing again what has caused the reductions in supply, and probably the largest one is because of the new drought of record, which we've incorporated into the model. Okay, and now I really got messed up. Somebody gave me the notes I'm supposed to be following, and I was winging it pretty good. Or at least I thought I was. So this is just hitting the same 3 points I said before, of that it's the reduction. When we have large rainstorms, the last time Choke Canyon refilled, which, by the way, it still hasn't refilled, there was more sediment that came in than we thought would be in. And then the recalls. What we would propose is that the permits will be for 30 million gallons per day on the Inner Harbor and 40 million gallons per day on the La Quinta. However, what we would build is plants, design and build plants at 10 MGD or million gallons per day, expandable to 20 in 12 months or less. So you would have much of the infrastructure in place for the intake, the discharge, the header of where you would install pumps, where you would be able to put the additional membranes in, so that you could essentially do that expansion from 10 to 20 million gallons per day in 12 months or less. You would not build these largers, at least the advice we've gotten from the experts is, unless you're going to utilize the additional capacity of the intakes and discharge to the 30 and 40, you would not build that unless it's going to be less than 10 years. So if we get closer and you see that that need is going to be less than 10 years, you might build that additional. But all of these scenarios envision a plant originally treating 10, but easily expandable to 20. This shows the supply and demand history. Okay, we are a surface water system. We have multiple sources, but they're all still surface water. The red or the blue line represents our firm yield, and if you look at that firm yield, you'll see that there's an uptick in about 2015. That's when we brought Mary Roads Phase 2 on, or the Colorado River water. But then you see that it came down steadily after that, and that was because of those three issues that I said previously. The yellow line you see going across there is a trigger that we would propose, and that is 70% of the firm yield. There's really nothing greatly scientific about that, other than the committee, when they had discussions, we ranged anywhere between 70 and 80. We arrived at when did people get the most uncomfortable, and generally that was industries, and it felt like the last couple of scenarios, it's been around the 70% range. That could be adjusted upward or in one way or another, but the key is that was kind of just the comfort factor people had when they watched and they've lived through it. And then the red line is essentially the average over the period, and you'll see that we were using more back in 2008 or 2009, 2012, but after we went through the drought, we went down, and we've stayed fairly steady at those lower numbers. The demands really have not come back up. Some important takeaways. Once again, we're 100% dependent on surface waters. In other words, we need rain in order to meet our demands. Seawater desalination is a drought-proof water supply, and that it can be designed and expandable on a short time frame, and it's affordable. And we are closer to the 70% of our firm yield, which the committee has identified as our trigger point. Demand assumptions, there's going to be a large increase in water demand are projected. These are some known projects, and I want to highlight that these are kind of the maximum contract amounts of the first two. They're not necessarily the demand that we will actually see, but they're maximum contract amounts. And that's important because the take or pay, like on the first one for Gulf Coast Growth Ventures, is actually 15 million gallons per day. So that kind of tells you that they're not necessarily going to be taking the 25. So when we did our demand as well as revenue projections, we assumed it would be about 20 million gallons per day rather than the 25. Let's see. Okay. The new water supply should be designed to meet the needs before the actual demands occur. And a seawater desalination plant requires about 24 months to design and build. That's assuming you have the permits and land, which is part of the process we're already on track to be able to do. So we're already on that path. This just says that we need to continue that path based on the demand projections of in the 2022, 2023. And we've put in, if we have another project that comes in with a similar demand to Gulf Coast Growth Ventures, we've kind of put it as a sliding scale. We put it at 2028, but it could move forward or backward depending on when such an entity comes. Okay. This is our supply demand projections. The graph projections over time, which are the blue columns, and you'll see that there's a major jump in 2023 or 2022, which is the projected time period that Gulf Coast Growth Ventures is telling us that they're going to be online and be able to take the water. And actually right in, I believe it's 2023, that the actual take or pay kicks in. So even if they haven't started up in 2022, the take or pay contract, in which case they would start paying for 15 million gallons a day, whether they're taking or not, would kick in. The other jump that you see in the 2023 is Seal Dynamics Southwest, of what they're now projecting, I believe, to be online in 2023. The yellow line shows the 70% of the firm yield based on essentially when we would do the increases of both demand and supply. And the first jump there is the 10 million gallons per day of the yellow line of a plant, once again expandable to 20. Because of the large amount that you may be looking at, and we're envisioning that it would be in San Patricio County, that you would almost, on the second one, if they truly are going to get 25 million gallons a day, you would have to actually build the 20 million gallons per day plant if that large of a demand came. But that would be the next large customer. It's not on any of them that we currently know are coming. %, as I said, that was just a comfort factor that the committee as a whole kind of coalesced around somewhere in that area. Demand will reach 70% in the 2022 to 2023 timeframe, and due to the design, build, and startup time, we need to essentially be continuing on in 2021 with the first plant operational. And then the second plant would really be dependent on the timeline of a next big customer, which I think we've heard that there might be one in San Patricio, but the key is that would be a second trigger rather than the first trigger. Financial assumptions, we kind of hit it before. You would design and build a 10 million gallons per day seawater plant, easily expandable to 200 million gallons per day, and that's why its initial construction cost would be somewhere in the $140 million, but that next increment to take it to 20 would be approximately $50 million, so it's not a straight split. And that would get you the membranes, pre-treatment, and post-treatment equipment is what the $50,000 would get. Everything else would kind of be already there. 50 million, I'm sorry. Maybe I should get back to reading the script. The other part is where we made the assumption that we would go for state water implementation funds, or SWIFT, from the Texas Water Development Board, and we assumed a 30-year loan at 2% interest. I think someone told me just recently it's somewhere around 1% is what they're being able to get loans from them. So the part to that I want to highlight is in February of each year is when they ask for the abridged applications. And if, as we're recommending, you continue so that you could do construction in 2021, that would mean that we should submit an application in February of 2020. We'll be bringing something along those lines back to you. The key here is the last time we did this type of funding, it took until about November to get to closing. And the key is at any time between the application submittal and closing, you can say, okay, we've changed our mind, so that you don't have to take the money if you change your mind. But the key is if you don't submit an application, you can't rush it in later. So that's why we would recommend that we still submit an application in February, so that essentially we don't close or burn a bridge in front of us. The drought surcharge exemption fee right now, a majority of our large volume users are paying, and we're looking at having a revenue of about $3.5 million this year. We're on track to have that come in. When we get the additional demands in 2022, that would jump to about $5.8 million. This shows essentially what the revenues from that drought surcharge in blue. The gold or yellow is the current 5 cents that all customers pay. And you can see that we can make the debt service payments purely off of the 25 cents in order to build that 10 expandable to 20 with construction payment starting in 2023. And this assumes that everything that's been accrued prior to that would actually be applied so that you reduce what you're borrowing. In other words, we take what is in there and we pay that towards the construction, and then you only borrow what's needed beyond that point. So you reduce what you're borrowing. Then the other one is if a plant were needed in that 2028 timeframe, you have several events occurring. One is that you're going to be increasing the 25 cents, and also we have quite a bit of debt that we're currently servicing for Choke Canyon, Mary Roads Phase 1, and Wesley Seal Dam improvements that we did. All of those essentially are going to be coming off and will be paid off in this 2028 to 2030 timeframe. So the financial takeaways: large increases in water demands are projected to occur, and everything we're seeing is that they will be taking water in 2022. It will be about $140 million to do the construction. We would some of the most favorable financing I think that you can find anywhere is through the Water Development Board and the SWIFT financing, and that the drought surcharge, debt service, and some of the 5 cents or the raw water development charge would cover these costs. So our recommendation is to secure a drought-proof water supply that meets future needs, develop the procurement process. So once we're already on the path of identifying the sites, and along those lines. But what we would recommend is continue into developing the procurement packages, and it's going to take a while to do that, and keep on moving. Okay. Submit the application, as I just said, for SWIFT funds in 2020, February of 2020. And then this first seawater wow, I was talking too fast, and now I need to slow up and let my brain catch up with my mouth. Based on the supply demands we're projecting, the first seawater desalination plant should be online and operational in early 2023. And once again, that's possible by going in 2021. Just as I tell the staff, this isn't an or discussion. It's kind of an and. We shouldn't just go seawater desalination and look at nothing else. So this is to let you know we are continuing to look at the other alternatives. We are continuing to look at reuse. We are, the ASR, we may slow that down a little bit, but that is still out there as a place to store. We are evaluating groundwater. We've had several discussions, I believe, with Evangeline and some others. And then seawater desalination, given where our location is and the fact that we found it is affordable, that's the one that we're recommending continuing.